A very good evening to all of you. I welcome you all to the ICAN initiative, the Hindu and Indian Express analysis. We will start the day with the prelims theme of the day. And for prelims theme, we will continue what we started yesterday. So yesterday we had taken up the Himalayan rivers and listed out the rivers and their tributaries. So today we'll take up the peninsular rivers and then we'll list out the tributaries of these peninsular rivers separately as their right bank and left bank tributaries. And again we'll repeat the same thing related to the cities. So you also have to make a list of the important cities which are located on these rivers. So this is the prelims assignment or the homework that you have to do for today. Now we'll start with the first topic of the day, and this is related to the self-help groups. So self-help groups, the civil societies, is a part of your GS2 syllabus. So you may have a direct question on the self-help groups as to how far they have been successful in elevation of poverty or how far they have been successful in the empowerment of women. So critically analyze the success or otherwise of the self-help groups. So this is a very important question that you must keep very thorough material ready with yourself. So when you talk of self-help groups, so you must know the origin that it started in this whole concept of the self-help groups, where people, especially women, a small number of them, like 10 to 20 of them, they get together, they form an informal group and they have the common objectives to meet. So whether it could be skilling them for over one particular skill and helping them to carry out some income generating activities so that they come out of the poverty trap. So it helps in the poverty elevation and also in the empowerment of women. So this whole concept was started somewhere in Bangladesh by Muhammad Yunus, and when it was started there for a group of women, it became extremely successful there. It not just helped in the poverty elevation among these groups of women, particularly in the villages, but it also helped in the empowerment of women. This whole initiative saw how the women were really empowered out of this initiative. They also learned to make their own financial decisions, and they also started to participate in the important decisions that were taken about women. So all such changes happened because of the self-help groups. When we talk about the evolution of the concept in India, it started somewhere in Mayrada in Karnataka. Then Seva started to promote self-help groups of women workers. So like this, the concept evolved in India as well. And then even the NABARD has been the NABARD and the self-help groups bank linkage program is there, where the self-help groups get concessional credit from the banks, and this credit is used by the self-help groups to perform some income generating activities. So they will also even come together with they pool their own savings, and that collective savings is then put to use to perform some income generating activities. To give you some examples, it could be jewelry making or papad making, pickle making, then soap manufacturing. So these are the various skills where the self-help groups can come together and start performing these income generating activities. However, there have been several issues when you talk about the functioning of the self-help groups in India. So one of those issues has been discussed in this article, and that is related to the credit that is being given to the self-help groups in India. So what this particular article says is that nearly 91,000 crores of loan has been outstanding for which has been given to the self-help groups. So 91,000 crore at the end of March 2020. This was the amount of loan that was outstanding which has been given to various self-help groups. So 91,000 crore of loan has been given to nearly 54.5 lakhs self-help groups in the country. So these 54.5 lakh self-help groups have a loan outstanding of 91,000 crore. So what this article is saying that whenever concessional credit is given to the self-help groups, not every time this credit gets used to perform some income generating activities, as a result of which there have been a lot of failures on part of the self-help groups to pay back this loan taken from the banks. So this has led to a rise of non-performing assets for the banks who have given loans to the SHGs. So, one analysis shows that 22 states and union territories had a high ratio of the non-performing assets for the SHG loans that they have given to the loans that they have given to the SHGs. And for 22 states, this ratio of the NPA was higher than the national average. So, to take few examples, for in the case of Uttar Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh has nearly 72,000 self-help groups. Out of this, whatever loan has been given to these self-help groups, 36% of that loan amount has turned out to be non-performing assets. So the highest, however, has been in Arunachal Pradesh, where 43% of the loan that has been disbursed by the banks to the self-help groups have turned into non-performing assets. And this is shocking because in Arunachal Pradesh there are only 209 self-help groups, and out of the loan that has been dispersed to the small number of 209 self-help groups, 43% of the amount of loan dispersed has become non-performing assets. So we have Arunachal Pradesh, then in UP it is 36% of the loan has turned out to be non-performing assets. Then comes Punjab, which has 19% of the loan which has turned into non-performing asset, and then is Uttarakhand, which has 18% of the loan dispersed to the SHGs becoming NPAs. So this is one issue associated with the working of self-help groups. First issue is, however, that several of these SHGs struggle to get concessional credit from the banks to carry out some income generating activities. And secondly, even when they are given loans, not many of these self-help groups are engaged in performing these income generating activities. Some of these loans may even be used for consumption purposes by these women, and thereby the loan amount gets consumed, and they are hardly invested in carrying out some income generating activities or skilling of the members of SHGs. So this one issue is there which needs to be overcome, because if the proportion of NPAs keep rising, the banks also become very hesitant to give concessional credit to the SHGs, and that will defeat the whole concept of SHGs. So this particular issue needs to be considered, and we need to resolve it. We need to improve the rate of SHGs in performing the income generating activities, and then increasing their capability to pay back their bank credit whatever they have got. So this was the issue related to the self-help groups. Now we'll move on to the next topic. So the next topic is the application of robotics. So robotics comes under your GS3 syllabus under science and technology. As far as robotics is concerned, your common questions that you may have is what is robotics? That is, you may be asked to write the definition of robotics or robots, and then what is the application of robotics in various fields. You may sometimes be asked about the application of robotics in a particular field, for example in medicine, because as far as medicine is concerned, the robotics has a lot of applications. So you may just be asked about the application of robotics in the field of medicine itself, or you may broadly have a question on the application of robotics. So this particular topic we had already taken up as a part of discussion of a question. So we had seen earlier what has been the application of robotics in various fields, which includes medicines, agriculture, space, defense, and various other fields. 8 to 9 fields we have already discussed the application of robotics before. So what we are going to discuss here is a recent example that can be quoted in your answers. So we'll be talking about a robot that's named as Spot. So Spot is the name of the robot, and this has been built by the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, that's MIT. So what this Spot is going to do is basically Spot is in the form of a dog. It has been given the shape of a dog, and so what Spot is going to do is it is going close to the COVID-19 patients and is going to measure the vitals of these patients. For instance, it's going to measure the temperature of the patients, their breathing rate it is going to measure. It is also going to measure the pulse rate of the patients. So it is also going to measure the amount, the oxygen saturation levels in these COVID-19 patients. So this is very important because the pandemic itself is of the nature of the pandemic itself is such that we need to avoid contact and we need to implement social distancing. So in such cases, the robots can really help a lot, because the healthcare workers don't need to go near to the COVID-19 patients to ask them or to measure their vitals. Rather, these robots can approach the patients and even analyze the body temperature, the breathing rate, pulse rate, and even the oxygen saturation levels in the body. So in fact, this particular robot also carries a tablet along with it, and when it goes near to the patient to record these measurements, the doctor sitting from another room can ask questions to the patients, and the patients will be able to answer, and the robot will be able to just record it in the tablet. So this will help the doctors, because they don't have to be in the same room as the patient to ask questions about how they are feeling. So all of this has made tackling this pandemic a lot more easier for the healthcare workers who are already pressurized, and it will also help us to tackle the pandemic particularly because of its nature of spreading with contact. So this is one current and the most recent example of how robotics can help us in the healthcare system. So this can be quoted because the pandemic is definitely in news, and if robotics can help us in dealing with this, then nothing like that. So you can quote this recent example. In the future also, this pandemic is going to stay, so such application of robotics are definitely welcome. So you can quote this recent example. So now we'll move on to the next topic. So the next topic is related to the digital economy. So when we talk of digital economy, one thing is that we have personal data of the people, which is very sensitive or confidential and which needs to be protected. For that, we need a different kind of legal framework, which can be in the form of the data protection law. The second is the non-personal data. This non-personal data needs to be shared among the people, among the various stakeholders, so that we develop into a strong digital economy. So in this context, related to the governance or the regulation of the non-personal data of people, government had set up the Gopal Krishnan Committee. So the work of this committee was to figure out and recommend how the non-personal data can be shared, and what are all the principles that need to be followed on sharing the non-personal data of people. So in this article, basically it talks about why is it important to share non-personal data. So it explains various reasons why it is important to share non-personal data. Let's analyze this. So why data sharing is important? First, we are talking about digital economy, and a digital economy definitely has its center as the data that is collected from various stakeholders. The economy which is on the digital infrastructure can sustain only when the data that is generated by the people using digital services or digital devices is accessed and is shared among multiple stakeholders, so that we have business models built upon this data. So data, we say, is the new oil, because data is that much valuable for today's businesses, and that is how the digital economy can boom. So when we are talking about a digital economy and we want to increase the contribution of digital economy to the overall economic growth in India, we need to ensure that the non-personal data is sufficiently shared among the stakeholders, so that we have business models built on these data. So that is why it is very important for us to share data. The second important reason is the digital corporations. So today, if you look at various corporations, many of them have these digital services or provision of digital goods as one of their components, because many things have now gone online. So that is how these digital corporations are making their place now. Even if you talk about some of the important services, be it education or health, things have gone online, and these digital corporations have come up which are offering these important digital services, goods and services to the citizens. So that is another reason why it is important to share data, so that because these digital corporations at the end of the day are engaged in provision of such vital services to the citizens, be it health or education. So thus it needs to share data, so that the provision of services is getting regulated. Next is the digital power. So what this says is, if you look at 7 out of the 10 big digital corporations, so they have this kind of digital monopoly over the data. So because of this digital monopoly, that a monopoly that they get because of the data that they have is going to make them monopolistic. So this also has a geopolitical dimension. So if you look at some of the major digital corporations, they are in the United States or China. We still have we still survive with the fact that a lot of our data are being stored in the United States, and those companies have monopoly in India. So therefore, having these digital monopolies by just a few corporations, and this having a geopolitical dimension, particularly with major of these digital corporations being in China and United States. So this also has a geopolitical dimension to it, and this is important. That is why it is important to share the data, the non-personal data, so that these few companies do not have those monopolistic tendencies, and they don't enjoy that monopoly. That is why it is important to share non-personal data, so that there is a free flow, and not just few of these companies who have collected the data end up being monopolistic. Next is the consumer's exploitation. When just few of these corporations have the monopoly over the non-personal data, and they are kind of driving and navigating through this digital economy, then that leads to exploitation of the consumers. So we need to ensure that the consumers are not exploited, and that is also the reason why we need to share the non-personal data. Next is competition and innovation. If there is no free flow of non-personal data, if there is no sharing of data, that is going to curb and suffocate innovation and competition, and healthy competition among the corporations. Because few of these corporations who are collecting the data will end up being monopolistic, and that is going to kind of suffocate innovation and competition among the rest of the other players in the so therefore there won't be a level playing field, there won't be a fair equitable access to the data to come out with digital businesses and models. So it is important for healthy competition and for innovation, we need to ensure that the digital data is properly shared, and there is a good flow of the data, so that this data is used by businesses to come out with their own innovative ideas, and there is a healthy competition and a level playing field for all the players. So these are the reasons why we need data sharing, and this is precisely what the Gopal Krishnan committee also says, that in fact the main purpose of the committee was to ensure that the data is shared widely and is also available widely in the society for competition, innovation and everything. So in this context, the Gopal Krishnan committee talks about various stakeholders like the data custodians. Data custodians is those who are going to be entrusted with the data. Then there are data trustees. Data trustees are they comprise of representatives of the society for whose data is being collected. Then the Gopal Krishnan committee also considers this data as community data, because if it is the data is being collected from the community, then it becomes a community data. The committee says that there is a community ownership of data, because data is being collected from the community, and therefore it needs to be shared back with the community. So whoever needs this data to develop whatever they want to, because the data has a community ownership, it needs to be shared back with the community. So Gopal Krishnan committee says that it is community data. And the other various bodies which are being discussed as a part of this committee, like the data custodians, the data trustees. So all of this we have already seen in one of our previous ICANN videos, that there are 4 such stakeholders. So if you have forgotten, go back and revise that video. So I will not be repeating that now. So there are different bodies, like who are what forms the data custodian, who form the data custodians, who form the data trustees. So like that, there are 4 different vocabulary that the Gopal Krishnan committee talks about. So you need to know that. So in this whole article, the main focus was on why it is important to share non-personal data. So we have discussed that. Now we'll be moving on to the next topic. So the last topic for the day is hate speech. This is a part of your GS 3 syllabus. If you're talking about hate speech and how social media has been responsible for increasing the instances of hate speech and the crimes related to hate speech. But hate speech as such can also be a part of your GS2 syllabus, because speech as such flows from your freedom of speech and expression from your constitution. So hate speech can be a violation that comes from enjoyment of this speech. So this can come as a part of either of the GS2 or GS3 paper. What we'll be talking about in this editorial is what role the social media has got in tackling hate speech. So firstly, hate speech may have been there always, but it is because of the presence of social media like Facebook, Twitter, that the spread of the hate speech has become has never been at this pace before. So the pace at which the hate speech spreads, and also how it leads to the occurrence of crime in the society, is unprecedented, and it's happening on a very large and vast scale. The speech, whatever goes onto the social media, spreads like a wildfire, and it causes a lot of crimes in the society. So it's definitely important to tackle hate speech. But however, because of the social media platforms, it is not always possible for the government alone to look at who is speaking what on social media and be able to regulate it. So when we talk of the various stakeholders in this scenario, one is definitely the government, the other is the users who are trying to put their content on the social media, and third of course is the social media platforms themselves. So these platforms cannot shy away from the responsibility of regulating the content on their platforms so that the hate speech does not spread. So therefore, there is responsibility that is lying on these social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter. They need to shoulder this responsibility of tackling hate speech on their platform. So as far as this is concerned, why it is also important to think about the spread of hate speech on social media platform. If we take the example of Facebook, for Facebook, India has 290 million Facebook users, and it has 400 million WhatsApp users. So definitely by just looking at the figures, we know how fertile ground the social media is offering for the spread of hate speech. So if one really intends to spread hate speech, then this is the ideal platform, because it has such a wide and huge reach which no other means of media has. The print media or the audiovisual media may not have so much of reach as these social media platforms have. So that is why they become the fertile grounds for spread of hatred and misinformation, which may lead to occurrence of crimes in the society. So this precisely explains why it is important to tackle hate speech on social media. When we talk especially of Facebook, it has mainly three ways which it uses to tackle hate speech on its platform. The first is the content, the users of these platforms. So those users who come across any hateful content on the social media platform can report Facebook about it. So here it is the responsibility of the user who come across any such hateful content can report it to the social media platform, that is Facebook. The second way of regulating hate speech on social media is by using artificial intelligence. So Facebook has these artificial intelligence algorithms which it uses to detect and regulate hate speech on its platform. Apart from this, third, Facebook also has what are called as content moderators. So it is a job of these moderators to monitor hate speech that can be seen on the social media platform and be able to regulate it. So these are the three ways which Facebook is using to regulate the hate speech content over its platform. But however, these social media platforms, it is seen that they have fallen short of shouldering this responsibility on controlling hate speech. If you look at the way Facebook has functioned in United States, it has done a pretty good job. So it has had its own called as moderators who are going to look at the content on the media platform and report it to the Facebook whenever they violate the guidelines on hate speech. Then in order to show that it is really very serious about tackling hate speech, it has even removed some of the ads and promotions, the content posted by the United States President Donald Trump on the re-election 2020 campaign. So some of the tweets have been also removed. So this way Facebook has done a good job in United States. But coming back to India, it is said, what this article is trying to say is, in India, Facebook has not been doing enough to control hate speech on its platform. So this is what this editorial is trying to tell. So it says that Facebook basically has an algorithm that can detect hate speech, and this algorithm can recognize more than 40 languages across the world. So through this algorithm, which can recognize more than 40 languages across the world, Facebook is trying to detect online hate speech and control it. But out of these 40 languages, in India, the languages covered are Bengali, Urdu, Tamil and Hindi. But majority of our population is not posting on the social media in these languages, and there are several other regional languages which people take recourse to express themselves on the social media platforms. So just covering these 4 languages in the entire India, wherein this huge is the user base of the Facebook platform in India, and covering just 4 languages in its hate speech detection algorithms is not going to be enough. India has 800 languages, out of it 22 languages are even recognized as official languages. So out of this, just having 4 languages in Facebook's hate speech detection algorithm is not going to help really much in controlling hate speech or hateful content on the platform of Facebook. So this is one concern, that Facebook has not been doing enough in India. So you may have a question on what can be the role of the social media platforms on tackling the tackling of hate speech, in which case you can introduce by saying why is it important to control hate speech on such platforms, because they have such a huge user base. So you can quote the statistics of 290 million and 400 million just for Facebook and WhatsApp, and you can say through this statistics you can say how huge a reach they have, so which no other form of media had before. So that is why it is important to tackle it, otherwise it is going to give rise to various crimes. So recently you saw what happened in Bangalore, the communal violence. It was based on a tweet itself, and similarly the riots that happened in Delhi. So all of this, they are the different forms of crimes that this hateful content can lead to. So through that you can introduce, and then you can say that these social media platforms can use various measures to control the hateful content, whether it is the users reporting it and also the users being very responsibly posting their content, and next is the these moderators who are going through the content, and then these algorithms. So how each of these you can put it as a subheading, and you can tackle in your answer, which can give your answer a better structure also. So that way you can tackle this. And these were the other articles that weren't important from the exam point of view, or which didn't have any new content. So this is a question, prelims question based on current events. TrueNat was recently in news, so you have to tell what this is related to. So that is it for today. Thank you.